Well, welcome everyone. Sorry about that. We had some technical issues. I think you're all sorted out now. So I do want to welcome all of you today to the offices of the Institute for Democracy, Journalism, and Citizenship here in Washington, D.C. at the D.C. campus for Syracuse University for this event with the Partnership for Public Service. Today, we are going to be looking at the relationship between younger Americans, Americans under 35, and the federal government, and specifically how much or how little younger adults trust the government, why, and what can be done about it, what should be done about it. First of all, I just want to acknowledge the situation in Florida and say that all of our thoughts are with Floridians who are facing the hurricane and its aftermath, and the first responders and emergency workers working on the situation. For the audience here in the room and for several hundred people who are watching this event online, I just wanted to do some introductions and say thank you for joining us. My name is Margaret Tolive. I am a journalist. I'm the Kramer Director of the IDJC, which is a joint project of Syracuse's Maxwell School and Newhouse School. And our nonpartisan mission is to learn and educate the public about the interrelationship between the news and media that people consume and how that impacts our government, our democracy, and civic participation. And so there's a lot of alignment with the Partnership for Public Service, I think, on this event today. I'm joined by Mark Jacobson, the Vice President for Research, Evaluation, and Modernizing Government at the Partnership, and Nadia Shutava, the Research Manager. The Partnership for Public Service, of course, is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that aims to strengthen democracy and improve government. We're also joined today by a couple of younger federal employees under the ages of 35 who are people to watch now and in the future, and a couple of my students, our students here doing a semester in DC for Syracuse, who are interested in government, interested in public service, and I'm really looking forward to that panel. So, let's talk about why we're here real quick, and then we'll get into the conversation. Earlier this year, the Partnership for Public Service learned through some of its research that Americans' trust in the federal government, which is low across the board, is especially low among adults under 35. It's just 15% trust in government compared with about twice as much, a little more than twice as much for older Americans. So over the summer, the partnership decided to focus on this younger group and conducted 4 focus groups of around 10 people each as a starting point. And that helped to shape a poll of about 1,000 US adults under 35, which took place in August. And it's those findings that have provided the data for a report that you are issuing today. That's going to be the foundation for this conversation. And whether you are here with us in the audience or watching online, we're going to make the link and QR codes to that report available so all of you can dig into the numbers and the findings a little bit more. Okay, so today's conversation, which I swear we're going to start right now, is organized in 3 parts. First, I'm going to be talking with Nadia and with Mark about what the polling in the first group showed. Then Mark is going to be talking with and hearing from the featured workers and students. And then Nadia will engage with you in the audience. So, without further ado, let's get started. I think where I want to start in your report and your findings are word clouds. Does everyone know what a word cloud is? Okay. Part of the research was a word cloud asking these younger respondents under 35, what words immediately come to mind when you think of the federal government? What did they say, Mark?
Well, the words that came to their minds were corrupt. Oh, I'm sorry, I should use the microphone too. We have folks online. The number one word that came to mind was corrupt. And I find that very striking because I can understand, having served in federal government, you might say confusing, challenging, misinformed, all sorts of things, but corrupt never really came to mind.
Or it could be like helpful, safety net.
They could be positive as well. But I think what Nadia was able to put together, I think, was one of the more striking findings. And I think, Nadia, the second, the more popular negative phrases, I'm not sure, disorganized was also a big one as well. But again, corrupt just stood out to me.
in
That's something
large
we should-
orange letters.
Lar-
You'll see
literally
other
in large
people-
orange
yeah.
letters, something we should be
Was this an
concerned about.
open-ended survey? Did you give them like terrible words and positive words, or was it open-ended?
No, so that was a part of, was one of the first questions we asked our focus group participants. So we asked them, what are one or two words that immediately come to mind when you think about the federal government? So it was literally at the start of the
It was
conversation,
open-ended.
before we started priming them or talking about any of the functions, just what comes to mind.
How many positive words, Nadja, did they come up with top of mind, and which were the positive words?
So none.
None. Okay.
Yes, so most of the words were negative, some of the words were more on the neutral side. And I have this word cloud right here printed out. It's a little small for you all to see, but I can refer to it. And, we have president, we have childcare, we have rules, finances, laws, so these are more on the function, neutral side. And then, security as well.
But it wasn't like freedom, innovation.
No, in fact,
Yeah.
if you read it from the top, what you get is slow, incompetent, corrupt, disorganized, self-interested.
Okay, so did this guys make you feel excited that the work you're doing is really important, or did it make you feel sad or surprised, or were you kind of cynical about it? Like, when you saw the feedback, what was your immediate reaction?
Well, so at the partnership, we have been doing research on trust in government for over 3 years now, coming up to 4. So unfortunately, that was pretty much the expectation. So we weren't surprised to hear that kind of negative feedback, especially when you speak about the government overall.
Okay.
So if you ask about their general perception of what you think, what are your associations? We have heard similar feedback before when we were in focus groups with just the general population. We see similar feedback when we ask open-ended questions from our survey respondents. So that was not surprising for us.
The surprise was the gap, the gulf between other Americans and the youngest group of Americans.
That was one of the surprising findings. One more was coming from the survey. So in our research of the general population, we see a big difference between people who self-identify as Democrats, Republicans, or Independents. Here with younger population, we didn't see that much of a difference.
So I want to put a pin in that. So what you're saying is, I mean, there was some difference. Younger people who identified as Democrats are slightly more likely to trust the government, but it was like maybe a 6 or 7 point gap. It wasn't like double or anything like that.
Yes.
And that's surprising. Why? Because ideology splits every other question in America.
Well, that you can actually look at it from several different perspectives. So one is that ideology is not the biggest issue here, and that solutions can appeal broadly. So if you look at it from the perspective, yes. So if you look at it from the perspective of what can you do to engage in people, to have them trust the government, your solutions are likely to appeal broadly, and that's that's a great thing. And
What's the bad way to look at it? I mean, what's the accurate but more a less rosy-eyed framework to look at it, I guess? I mean, is it because distrust is so pervasive that it hops the partisan aisle? Is how I would.
I think yes,
That's it.
that's the negative way of looking at it.
So we're gonna talk about a
unfortunately.
lot of data, but as we get started here, do we know why trust is low? I mean, I know in American society, Gallup's been tracking this since the 1970s, trust in every institution has declined over time. That's how society is processing institutions right now. But when it comes to the topic of the government, and especially with younger people, do we know why trust is low as we start to talk about all these areas for potential improvement or restructuring?
Yeah, so great question, really $1 million question, and I think that's exactly why it's been 4 years that we are researching it and trying to get into it. But because trust is such a broad concept and it's so hard to speak about it in very concrete terms, it's also hard to find the exact reason. So we can find correlations, but it's not necessarily always here's the cause, here's the effect type of relationship. But of course, there are things that definitely contribute to that. So again, the perceptions that the government is corrupt is something that plays into it. The perception that the government does not serve people like me, so people around their age, is one of the questions that we asked, and had only about one in three of our participants saying that the government addresses concerns of that
Of
for
younger
people of that age.
They don't need social security or Medicare yet, but they may need student debt relief or help getting a job or affording housing.
Yes, so student aid was one of the things that was definitely brought up multiple times within our focus group conversations. And then one of the things that we looked at specifically is communication and whether that's effective or perceived as effective by younger generations. And a lot of our participants, again, the number of those who agree that that the communication from the federal government is effective is only around 30%.
So
So
I
that
want to talk
also
about
is
that.
both a cause and effect.
I think I want to talk about communications in a few minutes when we talk about technology and solutions, right? Generational change and how government communicates.
Margaret, I think there's some things to emphasize as well, and some of the quotes that we received from individuals. To Nadia's point, there was one in particular from a young adult. I try and have faith in the government, but everything that I see or hear is just upsetting. Another quote: I would like to feel better about the government, but there have been a lot of I just feel like there's been a lot of promises made that haven't been fulfilled. And then a third: I think government takes a lot of other things and special interests of different corporations and lobbyists. I think there are a lot of influences. And I think this is where we get, can draw some of the conclusions about communications. There is a perception, there are real and perceived grievances in what government is doing. In the case of those that are perceived, the government may be providing exactly what they promised to provide, but the message isn't getting there.
Yeah, right. Because if the problem is real, I mean, if the problem is substantive, that's something that would need to be corrected before people change their minds. If the problem is sort of marketing, for lack of a better word, it's perception, it's news coverage, or where they get their information, you address that challenge in a different way. Can you talk a little bit, Mark, about where these younger people are getting their news and information?
Sure, but before, I'm actually going to let Nadia do that, but I want to say a couple things first, though, more broadly about this communications issue in terms of trust. If you haven't heard it before, you can't surge trust. It's something that's cultivated, it's developed over time, but you can lose it in an instant. You can lose it in an instant. And I think there's another piece here that you have to have not just effective communications, but that requires engaging and effective communications over a long term. It can't just be in times of a crisis. Margaret, you spoke about how since the 1960s and 70s, trust in government has gone down. And even with Watergate, you still had it at pretty high levels in the 60s and 70s, right?
Yeah.
And then you have a little drop in the 80s, and then you have a spike up after 9/11, and then a consistent drop all the way through 2024. And you think about, well, look at all the great things government's done in that period of time. Well, all right, something's going on here. And then finally, I think you have to understand that trust can also be eroded from outside malign influences as well. So with that in mind, that's the broader piece going on. There are these things that perhaps we'll have to look at in more detail for the next report, but there's this context within which we've put together these answers. And I think that, Nadia, you could address specifically where young people are getting this information from.
Yeah, so we had the question about sources of information about the government when we had our focus group discussions, and a lot of the people immediately spoke about social media, and we also asked the same question with options for people to choose from in our survey, and about half of our respondents said that social media for them is the first choice. Now we had people choose about three, so up to three different sources of information, and social media was not the only one that people chose, but yeah, overwhelmingly, social media is where young people minds go to.
And especially for the Gen Zs, the 18 to 24s, it was 54% with social media. The next highest choice being, I think, YouTube at 36%, traditional television at 32.
So these are non-traditional, they're not mainstream news sources that cover government as beats per se. It's whatever, it's a variety of information that you're watching on a platform that mixes news and entertainment and information and propaganda and editorial content.
Yes,
Government sites, I think, were between 18 and 21%. You know, so that's not where young adults are getting their news from regarding these issues.
Did you try to, I don't know if this is measurable, but did you try to measure how there is an element of politicking in American politics? There is a brand of politics that says the government is bad, we need less government, don't trust the government is wasteful, the government's corrupt. Do you have any way of measuring how much that political messaging has changed overall Americans' views or generational views, or is that not something that this report tackles?
This specific report does not go in that direction, but I'm sure it had an influence.
Yeah, I would say if you look at the consistency of our reporting between the August survey, the spring focus groups, previous partnership reporting,
yeah,
and then decades of the Pew reporting, I am confident saying that there's a correlation between that message that begins in the 60s that some from the left, some from the right, that government is bad in different ways, and it continues on.
Shape the culture in some way.
Absolutely. I mean, what's the line from President Reagan? The scariest words that any American can hear, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. That was a political ad.
That's stickiness, as they say. So we want to talk about possible solutions or ways to address these concerns, not just from a spin perspective, but from a substantive perspective. But first I want to ask you guys about an interesting little corollary to all of these findings, because people are actually very up on the federal government in one area this survey found. And that was when they realized that they might be able to get a job working for the federal government. Can you talk a little bit about those findings and how they, in a way, sort of, I mean, I think they completely contradict the idea that government's corrupt, disorganized, and ineffectual, but I'd love to work there. So how did you learn about that, and how do people thread the needle in their own thinking?
Yeah, so we started from asking the question of, do you think working for the federal government is a good way of serving your community? We asked that in several of our surveys, and consistently we're getting really high numbers for.
People were saying they did think it would be a good way to serve their community.
So in this latest survey that is the basis for the report that we're publishing today, we had 60% of respondents say that they think it's a good way of serving the community.
So 15% trust the government, but 60% think it would be a good way to serve your community.
Their community.
Great. Okay.
So that's a high number, consistently high. And then at the same time, we also asked them, well, have you considered working for the government? Have you applied? And then that number is very low. So that's already a gap between the two numbers that the government could definitely tap into. But also in the focus groups, we asked a number of questions about, well, what are your views of the federal employees? What are your views of the public servants? We showed them several videos that show young people working for the government and talking about their positions, talking about how they got to, consider government careers. And so the conversations kept revolving around government careers, government jobs. At the end of focus groups, we asked, what will be the one thing that you will remember from this conversation? So what's your one bottom line, one takeaway? And a lot of them said things around careers, including people who were extremely skeptical of government overall. So we asked them to do thumbs up or thumbs down for the government in the beginning, and then expand on this. And some of the people who had, thumbs down, the most negative impressions of the government were still, oh, so the government is hiring. That's interesting. Oh, there was one lady who said, I'm going to contact my cousin. He's looking for a job right now. So that was an interesting finding, and something that's, I think, in the realm of you know, if it offers a good, stable, well-paid position, people would still consider working there.
It also suggests to me that it's possible that there's a difference in how much people trust the entity versus the people doing the work, or there's a reflexive distrust of entities, but when you're asking more specific questions about function or services, people are more willing to trust or to buy into it.
I think it's this function of understanding that these people are like me, and as Nadia mentioned, you know, our spring report showing that about a little under 50% of the American public felt that, oh yeah, I see that the federal government has people like me. Interaction with federal employees. Our president, Max Steyer, likes to make a distinction between the bureaucratic battling class here in Washington, D.C. that often gets the coverage, but the fact that the overwhelming majority of federal employees are outside Washington, D.C., interacting with the public. And I think this suggests some approaches to mitigating the crisis in confidence, and crisis of trust, by making sure that federal employees are engaging with individuals out there. It's sort of you know, I know we have hope for how things like AI may make the federal government more effective, but I actually think that face-to-face communication with human beings, while perhaps being less efficient, may be more effective in the end for something that not only helps support trust in the federal government, but therefore helps strengthen democracy.
I know we need to bring this conversation to a close, maybe have opportunity for a couple of questions, and then go to our next panel. As we do that, I just want to ask you guys quickly in closing, do people know what jobs are in the government or not really? And top one or two prescriptions or tweaks that each of you would like to see or recommend for changing people's connections, or maybe how government can connect with younger people or help younger people.
Yeah, so I don't think there is enough information out there where young people are looking for the information. The information is there, the government is putting it out, but not necessarily in the spaces
On
where young
websites,
people are looking.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, so there's definitely an opportunity for improvement in that
And
area.
that's pushing into people's phones. What's the opportunity for improvement? Have you?
So even just platforms where people are looking for
YouTube.
jobs.
TikTok, no, that's another panel. Okay, not just TikTok.
Well, no, again, as Nadia writes in the report, I mean, this is about modernizing digital presence. And we know it's coming, but it's coming slowly. I also think when you look at the, 7% of federal workers who are under 35, then, you know, you wonder.
That's a very small number.
That's a pretty small number. And so who in the federal government are the champions for modernizing the digital presence and making sure that it's done in such a way as to communicate with younger people?
So perhaps hiring more younger people could be part of this initiative, a concerted effort. I don't know if that falls under EEOC guidelines or whatever, but.
Well, again, as suggested in the report, I mean, this could help with trust as well. But I think the biggest thing to me would be communicating more authentically, whether it's using more trusted influencers outside of government to partner. I mean, look, this is not the running of government, but look how political campaigns use influencers for different audiences, whether they're young people or different demographics. The federal government should do this. I mean, when I was a kid, I mean, what's the number one advertisement for the government I will always remember? This is your brain on drugs. I haven't seen an effective message.
Wait, did you find that message effective? Okay,
No.
never mind.
I mean,
That's
but just
another
think
panel
about
too.
it. But
Yeah.
just when the culture was there for a decade.
I remember Smokey the Bear.
Well, Smokey the Bear as well. Only you can prevent forest fires. I haven't seen messaging like that from the federal government on any
We
platform.
need Beyonce, FEMA. It's happening.
Taylor Swift.
Okay, let's maybe get your suggestions for good government spokespeople from outside government. We have time for a couple questions now, or we can save them until the end. But if anyone has questions about the data and the report, love to hear it. Love to hear it. And tell us who you are real quick. Ma'am, I'm going to take you first. Bakari, I know your name. I'm going to take you second.
So two
So I can
questions.
wait for that.
I'm Michelle Syracuse, International Trade Administration. administration. This is a question not on behalf of my agency.
Yes.
This is Michelle's question. Two questions. One is, did it come up the sort of challenging process to apply for federal jobs with the,
Great question.
and then the second question is, what about the current situation with the student loan repayment and the contractor who doesn't respond? There's a lot of challenges with student loan repayment, including the fact that federal government workers themselves aren't even recognized half the time in the system, and you have to, so.
Great question. So, did how hard it is to apply for a job come up, and how much did younger people's dissatisfaction over the student loan process impact their trust in government?
Yeah, so to the first question, because most of the participants of our focus groups did not in fact apply for federal government jobs, most of them would not be able to speak from that experience, but the ones who did definitely said that the process was very challenging. They didn't get updates when they wanted to get updates. It was very slow, very confusing. The language was hard to get through. And we also see a lot of feedback along the same lines from other programs that we as a partnership we do support interns going into the government. We advise young people who are interested in government careers around the hiring process, and the feedback we consistently get is that the process is very confusing. It's hard to understand. It's not like the other jobs that they are applying for, so that's definitely an issue that has been identified. And I know from our communication with federal government employees, they also a lot of times recognize that it's not the most efficient process for hiring.
It's really interesting. It was a great question. Thank you, Michelle. Bakari.
Morning. My name is Bakari. I'm a student here at Syracuse. So since we're on the topic about my generation's disdain for the government, I thought it was good to ask that, do you think the fact that people answered yes to receiving jobs with the federal government is because they believe that they can ensue change when they step into the positions? And even with inflation and the cost of living, because I know the numbers went out today and it's higher than expected. So do you think the desperate, for lack of better words, need for finances to fund our living is the reason why people are willing to take on any job, despite the fact that they don't necessarily believe in it?
So do they really want the government job, or do they just want a job?
And I'll start off by mentioning actually another report that we've done recently. We alluded to this, the survey that was done in the spring of 2024 that found that 65% of adults agree that, quote, working in the federal government is a good way for a person to serve their community. And it was a little higher for 18 to 34s, about 68%. To me, that report suggested that it's not about some sort of, oh, well, this is my only opportunity, I need a handout from the federal government. This is about serving. And I think the way the question was framed was very important, that people see it as a way to give back. And I think that's important when we're addressing the larger issue. I'm not sure I can address the second part of the question in terms of cost of living in that, but I will say, in my own experience as someone who had to help place students into jobs, and also as a former federal employee, this is one of the things that administrations going back at least the last 20 years have done, both sides of the aisle, by making sure that there have been regular wage increases, locality increases, and the like. But our report does not get into that, nor do the questions in terms of the specifics of wage, salary, cost of living.
But I would definitely say that it's all of the above. For sure, it's a factor, and in our focus groups, people were saying that they're interested in getting a job. So that's for sure something that people factor in. We did ask a question in our survey of what factors, if you were to consider government employment, which factors would be important for you, play into that decision. And then the first choice, or the thing that most people chose, was work-life balance. Then competitive pay was the second one, and then the third one was stability. So that third element of stability, I think, is something that the government can definitely explore, because some of the jobs outside of the government are not offering stability, or it's not as prominent of a factor, and so that's an opportunity for the government to appeal to that younger generation. But you know,
It does seem like
the pay was number
the
2.
overlays that stand out to me, I think especially with younger people, like I know climate change is a top area of concern. There are probably specific areas where there's a desire to do public service, that where there would be the most interest in pursuing work through the government. So I'm excited to see future surveys on this because I really want to know what that looks like. I have so many more questions. I'm really curious about who the next president is and what they might try to do in terms of the reshaping the civil service and how that would impact all this. But I know that's probably a different session too. We have time for one. Okay, if you're really fast, let's ask them both, and then we can do the answers, and then we're going to move to the next panel. You need a mic though. Yeah. Samantha.
My name is, Samantha Clemens. I work for the Syracuse University. And first I want to double down on the comment about the hurdles getting into federal government. I work with students, they 100% want to work in government. It's just difficult. And then my other question, my second thing is not a question, not a comment, but a question about the research. Was there any discernment between the different branches of federal government and which ones may kind of feed more into that distrust?
Okay, so Samantha, we're gonna come over here. We're gonna do your question too, and then we'll answer both. Great question.
Hi, I'm Jay. I'm a federal employee under 35. My question is similar to Samantha. Like during the focus group interview questions, did you ask specifically like about the branches of government, or if there's certain agencies that young people trust more than others? So I'm just curious how that played a role into the results of the study.
Yeah, happy to answer kind of both at the same time. We see consistently in these focus groups, in the research that we've done before, that people's minds immediately go to Congress, and that's like the part of government that I guess inspires most negativity, and that we really have to intentionally bring people's minds back to agencies, civil servants, non-elected government employees. And so in all of the questions and focus groups, we just consistently keep bringing people back. So they say, oh, you know, it's Biden and they can't agree across the aisle. And then we're like, well, what about the civil servants? What about the agencies? What about the everyday work that people are doing? And then for a few minutes, we have a conversation about that. And then somebody would bring the conversation back to like,
So it's the politicization of government
Yes.
that is driving the decline in trust on some level at least.
yes, I would say that in general that would be true, and you know, because we were more interested in the questions around civil servants and non-elected government employees, we kept asking those questions, and hopefully a part of the conversation was about that specifically.
But within the question of do you know whether ICE has more or less trust vis-a-vis the EPA or the National Security Agency versus, I don't know, whatever, something else?
So in this survey, we didn't ask questions about specific agencies. We did ask in our previous research, and one of the findings that we shared in some of our other publications is that most of the agencies are viewed more or less, definitely more positively than the government overall. What people mentioned in the focus group this time around, EPA, so anything that's around environmental protection, someone said TSA, which is, for me, was a
They
surprise.
liked the TSA? Oh, that's
That was
great.
a
You have to
surprise.
follow their Instagram.
Yeah, so that was one of the things that, I discussed with even my friends often. TSA has an
They must have pre-check.
excellent
Yeah.
Instagram, Instagram presence, so.
That's
They
great.
could have
Okay,
been
we can all
playing
take a page from the TSA. Okay, without further ado, I would like to say thanks to both of you for this conversation. Nadia and I are gonna get up. Mark's gonna stay here and introduce the next panel, and let's do it.
just wait for our panelists to join us up on the dais. All right, well, good morning again. My name is Mark Jacobson. I'm the Vice President for Research, Analysis, and Evaluation at the Partnership for Public Service. I'm actually, it's a little bit of homecoming for me because I'm formerly an assistant dean at the Maxwell School working, and I work with Margaret and Samantha and the team here. And so I'm really delighted to be able to do this partnered event in the spirit of not just showcasing the research about what the partnership is finding about federal service, but an understanding of what younger people are thinking about trust, and also addressing these issues of the difficulty that there is at times of finding internships and jobs in federal government. But enough, as I'm the over 35 member of this group, I'd like to kind of hear what others have to say, and I think you would as well. And what I'd like to do is introduce our panel here and then get to a couple of questions. First, to my immediate right, I have Amir Yudin, and he is an international trade specialist with the U.S. Department of Commerce, and he was a Department of Commerce intern at the Office of Public Engagement before that, and graduated from the University of Kansas, where he was involved in supporting entrepreneurial ecosystems and organizing. To his right, I have Kyle Gardner, who's a senior policy analyst at the Office of Management and Budget. He was actually a finalist for the Partnership for Public Services Samuel Heyman Service to America Medal. He has played a leading role in streamlining burdensome government forms, shifting how federal agencies collect information, and ensuring deserving recipients receive their public health benefits. And then to his right, I have Yanika Nichols, who is an undergraduate student at Syracuse University. She's majoring in information management and technology with a concentration in innovation, something we know the federal government can always use. Her goal is one day to work for Apple's human interface team. And then finally, I have Sanaya Zolano Doroteo. She is an undergraduate student majoring in international relations at Syracuse and plans to get a law degree once she completes her undergraduate studies. She'd like to work on political and economic policy between the U.S. and Latin America. And this semester, appropriately, she is interning at the OAS, the Organization for American States. Thanks to all of you. And I think what we'll start off with is a question that I think will get a little bit a different answer from each of you. But based on your experiences to date, whether as students, as interns, as employees, tell us broadly, what is your view of the federal government and trust based on what you've just heard over the last half hour?
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Okay, thank you. Well, I want to thank the Partnership for Public Service for having me here today. This is an excellent discussion, and I'm happy to be involved alongside my panelists here today. I think I share a lot of the same sentiments of both sides. I consider myself a resident Zillennial, 25 years old, so I can relate to both camps and schools of thought. And I can understand the institutional distrust and the lack of transparency in a lot of the mechanisms and happenings around government. I've had the privilege, also through the Partnership of Public Service, of interning with the Office of the Secretary. And there is when I realized that the people closest to the problem are closest to the solution. And I'll call back to the statistic Mr. Jacobson said earlier today, which is about 68% of people feel like working with the federal government impacts their communities directly. And that's firsthand what I experienced and experience within the federal government, and mainly within OS, and situated me to have a foundation within a career civil servant at the U.S. Department of Commerce. There's a lot of different reasons I think people have that sense of opinion, and it's rightfully so, but I've seen, and I think the resounding amount of Americans seen that when it's mission-driven work, they find that it's resolved, and they feel good about it, and they feel good about the federal government.
Thank you. Kyle?
Yeah, sure. Again, thank you for having us today. Thank you for hosting this panel. I agree with that. When those statistics were referenced earlier, what I immediately thought too is also when you do surveying of perceptions of the economy or perceptions of crime nationally versus in one's local community, and you routinely see that people will report that they think the economy is bad, but their personal household is financially well off, or that crime is bad nationally, but their neighborhood, their city is perfectly safe. And I think what you're perceiving there and what you're perceiving in these statistics is certainly, I would say, global negativity towards institutions, and probably heightened negativity bias, but still a strong sense of actually when you're engaging, when you're transacting with an individual, or the people that you know who work in government are good and they are not corrupt and they are not disorganized. And so again, I think solving for this problem is very difficult, but the general notion that the folks who were interviewed perceived that they could get involved in the government and continue to help people, I think suggests actually that there's still a very strong undercurrent in understanding that the government can be a force for good, as long as the people that you know and trust are the ones advocating for that good.
Yumika?
Well, for me, as someone who's more so in tech, until I came here for this semester of fall 2024, I wasn't very big on politics. It wasn't until I started exploring Washington, D.C. and putting my foot out there for myself after I realized that many sectors of federal government can use a tech person on their back helping them, that I realized the government is something that upholds stability within the United States. It keeps a certain level of peace and a certain level of how should I say it? It keeps it organized. It keeps us organized and stable. Sorry, it keeps us organized and stable within our country. And for that, I would say, as someone who came in not having a perception or taking a step back, because as you can tell, like within society, especially amongst young people, when it comes to politics and conversations about the government, you mainly see that unless you're someone who majors in it or who spends their time studying day in and day out, you see there's more of us who find it very stressful, very overwhelming, very nerve-wracking. I think taking not only people within the government and within the federal government sectors coming out towards us, but also us taking that step to want to be more open and can more derive a better perception of how we feel about it. That's what helps me derive a more pragmatic perception of the government.
For me, I think that, thank you so much. I think for me, my perception of government was definitely more negative, and I could relate to the responses that were given in this survey just because I come from a community, so I'm Mexican American, and my community is very much like anti-government because a lot of our issues are politicized on the often like depicted as something that is true, necessarily true. And I thought that the findings were pretty accurate in terms of the percentages and the responses of whether or not government is trusted among people my age. Just because our everyday conversation with my friends or my classmates, it's very much not criticizing the government, but just wondering why isn't being done for us, because we are the future leaders of this country. We are hoping to get to that point where we're able to say, to live comfortably and stably, like in a stable environment.
Let me ask you this. In your experience so far, and it's only a little bit of time into this particular internship, is there anything that has helped to either change your mind about your own perceptions of the federal government, or other things that have reinforced those perceptions for better and for worse?
I think my perceptions have definitely changed. I've been more optimistic in terms of how nationalistic I feel towards the government, like how much pride I feel, because one, I get to see and meet professionals. I just went to it was an event by the National Security Council, and it was for Hispanic Heritage Month, and I met a lot of immigration policy makers. I met Secretary of Homeland Security, my mayorkos, and basically seeing myself in their positions helped, like, not only helped change my perception, but also it gave me hope, because I know that one day I can also be sitting there, or like sitting in a similar seat. So in terms of my organization, it has, I think it's easier to create change in the government and in the US than in an organization like the OAS, because there's so many member states that are like kind of difficult to work with.
Well, sort of a similar question for you, Yamika. You talk about how in the future you'd like to work in the private sector, working in the tech sector. What are some of the considerations that, or what are some of the things that might get you to change your mind and look for a career in federal government, to sort of, help us get down the pathway to what does the federal government need to do to attract talented young people like yourself?
Well, for me, I would say me choosing to go with the private sector for my tech is because I'm someone who loves the sense of freedom within technology. So for me, I see technology more than just numbers and keyboards and coding. I see the whole creative aspect of it and what I can offer them. Working within private sector such as Apple, Tesla, Microsoft, those companies, you have a more wide range of your abilities as a tech person because you're free of range to do what you need to do within your job under their rules and regulations, aside from the government has for your rules and regulations. And when you do work a federal government job, which I am realizing a lot this semester, especially through my friends who work more on Capitol Hill and who have more government positions, that you don't work only for your sector, you're working for the public, you're working for the people. So keeping that in mind, you must understand everything you do, the decisions you make, it all comes down to not only your sector and your job, but your people. And I feel like as young people, who make this decision about going into federal or going into private sector, you need to understand and not as someone who wants to just work for my boss, because post-graduation, that is something I really thought about. Do I want to work for a company where it's just me in that company, be working like abiding by the laws of that company alone and having free will there? Or do I want to be someone who takes technology in a whole new directive and go more into federal government and use it to I think one position I was looking into after my spring immersion trip here was like IRS. We had a visit to IRS and IRS was talking about how they need tech people there and how tech people is what keeps their systems and their data is safe from being spread out and from different and keep the cybersecurity well. And I remember I was doing a lot of deep research into seeing about working there, but then again, it's also that feeling of my apologies. It's also that feeling of like that freedom I enjoy working with private sector that I can't get out of federal government.
So we need to make sure that organizations like not just NASA and others explain that when you're in the federal government, you can fly a drone on Mars. And show you that there are exciting things out there. I think these are good points in terms of where the federal government needs to communicate better in terms of attracting new talent. And speaking of new talent, Kyle, you were a 2024 Sammys finalist, as I mentioned, for your work to try and streamline burdensome government forms. What advice do you have, I really think for all of us, in terms of how we can do things when working in federal government to better connect with the public, to make it easier for them to access government services?
Sure. A lot of what I've been interested in is, I mean, everyone has an experience with a bad government form, right? And they're typically bad because they're quite long, they're quite poorly designed, so you don't have an intuitive sense of what are the important questions on a form and what are not the important questions. The framing can be very confusing. And a lot of this is because how is a form created? Well, a law is passed at one point, and then the agency issues regulations, and then they issue policies underneath those regulations, and then the very last thought at the end of the day is how do we vomit all of that content onto a piece of paper that somebody has to fill out? And it's the last thought, but it's actually the first thought that somebody interacting with the government has, right? When you are transacting with the government, by and large, it's through forms. And so, from an ethos perspective, from a high-level perspective, a lot of what I try to imbue is that legibility actually matters so much. It matters a lot more than the law that was originally passed, because it's the people who are actually seeking a service, who are seeking a benefit, who are seeking permission to do something, that are seeing this is what the government is treating me like, right? And so that's the first thing that I try to think about, is that the forums are actually one of the core ways that the government demonstrates its competency to the public. And then the second thing that I like to think about there is sort of what are the downstream consequences of it, right? So when I'm trying to work with an agency to try to improve a form, which oftentimes involves making tricky choices around what questions we can take off, or a comfort level with maybe generating information that's not as perfectly accurate. It's thinking also about, are we going to be able to effectively increase the trust that this person or this family has in, the food assistance program that they're receiving help from, or from Social Security, or from DHS and TSA, right? And so a lot of my guiding principles are thinking about how this one piece of paper actually and wraps so much more about how somebody perceives their experiences with the federal government.
Amir, you've had, as you said, you can bridge the gaps between the millennials and the Z's as a millennial. What advice would you have for each group, whether it's going in as at the start of their career or for a second or third job in their career? What advice would you have for those people your age who might be considering a career in the federal government?
Sure. I think I would, if I'm having a personal conversation with them, I would talk to them about what federal government is and what it's not. And I'll start with the latter, which is what it's not. It's not omnipotent. It doesn't have all powerful wielding wand that they can do anything they want at any given time without temporal restrictions. And the second thing is that it can be slow moving, but the thing that it is that it's responsive. Government is responsive, and it's fielded and supported by people who career civil servants and political appointees who really care about getting their work done. The second thing is that the federal government is diverse. And a lot of times we may not see it, and a call back to our earlier session is the majority of them do not even live in DC, let alone the East Coast. There's a significant amount of folks who work in the West Coast, or the South, the Midwest, where I'm from. And it's not only diverse with representation in the amount of people who are in these positions, but also diverse the breadth and depth of different positions within the government. So a call back to technology people within IRS, but also people need graphic designers, they need speech writers, they need people who have hard and soft skills, they need people who are really, really good in the weeds when it comes to technical competencies, such as like at NIST and understanding standards at the international level. But they also need generalists who are able to think about process innovation and improvement on a scale that happens both very small incrementally within a small office or task unit, all the way out to an entire agency or throughout the entire government. There's roles for everyone there. That's what I would share with them.
And what's the number one thing you would tell prospective employees to avoid? What's the mistake that they can avoid doing?
It's a good question. I would say making mistakes is fine, but also don't be afraid to use your youth as a competitive advantage for yourself, right? Your lack of understanding for bureaucracy allows you a line of sight that people who are institutionalists who may have 30 to 40 years in the position gloss over.
That's an excellent point. I think for my staff too, that's a reminder that yes, you can let me know when I'm doing something wrong. So, Sania, let me ask you as well. You've spoken about your initial internship experience with OAS, the opportunity to get to meet people at the most senior levels of government, the NSC, at least one cabinet secretary as well. What is the number one thing that the federal government could do to help recruit someone like you into federal service after graduation?
I think it would be the way that they reach out. So unless you go on the government website, at least in my experience and what I've seen so far, unless you go and scroll all the way down to where it says jobs or careers or opportunities, and then you subscribe, it's really hard to know when these positions open up. And also the requirements, I'm not saying that someone without a certain level of understanding should be hired, but at the same time, some of them require master's or PhD level. And I think as someone who is just now going to finish my undergraduate degree, thinking about another degree before working is just kind of crazy to me, because I want to get some type of experience, but at the same time, the experience that I need and the masters that I need will take much longer and for the position that I want. So I think just reaching out in general is difficult.
Those are really interesting points as well. I mean, we discussed earlier how difficult it can be for young people to understand what opportunities are available in the federal government. As Yanika mentioned, also the belief that government is not the place you go necessarily to have the freedom to be creative and innovate. There's a lot there about messages where those of us who have studied or been in federal government know these things exist, but there's a long way to go and a lot to do with communicating if we want to recruit people like you. Yanika, to that end, what about for you? What would it take to bring you into federal government?
It's quite interesting when I asked that because when I came on my immersion trip in March, someone asked me that. I don't remember which company that asked me, but they said, what would it take to recruit tech students like you? And one thing I would say to start, reach out to us, like Daniel said. When I attend fairs for my major, you have businesses like Chase, Microsoft,
But they're coming
But
to
yes,
career fairs.
but
and reaching out.
basically, yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, yeah, you have a bunch of tech companies, and truth be told, I think that's also what's shaping me to go more of the private sector. A lot of these companies that come to the iSchool for career services are private sector companies. They come, they reach out to us, you have them reaching out to us on Handshake, LinkedIn, even Indeed, because some students don't have an Indeed account for like internships. But we even have people doing that. You don't see a lot of government jobs. If I didn't subscribe, like Dania said, I wouldn't have known about so many government jobs out here and internships that I had applied for when I came to do this. I feel like if government jobs want a more wider variety of students, you need to also put in the effort when universities particularly have career fairs, because career fairs for different colleges have them different events. Send some of your text people out there. Send students who work with you to talk to other students. Get them invested because someone like me before now, in the beginning, I wouldn't think I really like had a role out here in Washington. That wasn't really my goal. My goal was to just go back home to New York City post graduation and hopefully work for Apple and be creative there. But coming out here, educating myself, opening myself to a new variety and realizing that I can work here and gain more interest.
And Amir and Kyle, real quickly, how did each of you learn about the federal jobs that you're now in today?
Yeah, I'll start there because I really identify with what you're saying. So I've known that I want to work for the federal government since I was probably 12 years old. And when I graduated undergraduate, I didn't even think about applying because other than high salience kind of bespoke positions like the Department of State, Foreign Service, or Teach for America, I had just no understanding of what it actually meant to apply to the federal government. And then I went to grad school almost immediately after undergraduate, and even exiting there, I was familiar with, again, high salience programming, like the PMF program, Presidential Management Fellowship. But in general, I just had no understanding of how to get in. And so, similarly to me, the grad school I went to is heavily recruited by consulting firms, and a lot of them brand themselves as working with the federal government. And so that was my end, right, was that I went to consultancy. I did that because I knew it got me a step closer, but it wasn't where I wanted to be. And that's something that I find very frustrating is that lack of direct recruitment at the career fairs, the lack of branding when they're showing up at universities. So how I ended up there was I had a friend from grad school, which is a classic grad school story, who reached out to me and said, "Hey, we've got a posting. You should apply. You really like it." And I got it through that process. So the last thing I would say here, right, is that I completely agree and believe that it's crazy that the federal government isn't as aggressively recruiting on college campuses as a Deloitte or as a Microsoft or an Amazon is, or a Chase, right, Bank of America. But absent a better job doing that, if you are here today or if you're online right now and you're curious and you have no clue how to go work for the Department of Commerce or the Department of Transportation or OMB, I cannot recommend enough that talk to your career counselor and get a sense of how to navigate USA jobs, right? Every single job posting is up on there, but figuring out what a real job is up there versus what is like a totally bizarre one is very hard to do if you have no baseline understanding. And then get to know people who work in the federal government already in areas that you're interested in. because we can all talk to you like a totally normal person, right? And then once we get to know you, we can also let you know when we have like actually interesting job postings that are open. And a lot of it does come down to that very classic social networking aspect of being like, hey, I think that you would be a good for this fit. Apply through this really weird website, and we'll keep an eye out for your resume when it comes in, right? And then from there, it's a competitive process, but it does start with sort of that basic word of mouth knowledge about what a real job is up on the website.
Yeah, I think I would extend on that a little bit, which is there's I would encourage young students, specifically in the undergraduate level, to focus on not where they would want to work, like ID, high ceiling places like Department of State or the Foreign Service Program, but think about the missions they want to be involved with long term. So if it's industrial policy at broad stroke, it's working on international affairs. You can work on international affairs at Commerce, you can work at the Department of Agriculture, and so you can be agnostic to where you land, but work on a mission-driven initiative that you can grow within the portfolio of. Aside from that, what got me into federal government was truthfully, I kind of stumbled into it. But I'll give one specific nod. I did it right at the top, which was the Future Leader in Public Service program provided through the Partnership for Public Service. That opened my eyes up to the executive branch. For the longest time, I was involved in entrepreneurial ecosystems. I worked in a startup. I had my own startup. I worked in the angel and VC community, and I was like, oh, this is where I'm going to land long term. And much like my other panels, I was like, yeah, private sector is the way to go. And then I translated that into policy-making experience on the House Small Business Committee, working on the legislative extensions of our innovation grants. And I was like, oh, this is cool. But really what got me going is just seeing all the impactful work that's happening in the executive branch. And I was there when the Chief of Staff of the Department of Commerce got up in a chair and congratulated us all on the passage of the CHIPS and Science Act, and seemed genuinely excited about the potential for industrial policy at Commerce. That's what got me going, and truly what kept me in my position right now.
That's excellent. I think we have a couple minutes left, and I just want to ask some final thoughts from each of you. What would be for Senia and for Yanika, what would be the one piece of advice you would give the Maxwell undergraduate and graduate students looking for internships?
I think it would be apply early. Have someone look at your resume. I'm pretty sure I missed a couple because I didn't meet with Samantha. And have good recommendation letters from people that you truly admire, that you know will write you in a good way.
But some advice I can give
For any undergraduate student.
for anyone, like Vivian said, check me in with your career services advisor to talk about your resumes, cover letters. Like, it's annoying because I remember I applied to like 20 positions out here, and that was like 20 plus cover letters, all different. But then again, it was like after each one you get better, it gets easier, there's like certain tricks along the way. Formatting your resume. So one thing I learned from my career service person was that make sure when you build your resume should be formatted to how the machine, depending on how your job place hired, the AI machine should process it through so that you can have that opportunity to go through. I think some of the reasons why I didn't get a few of the positions I applied for earlier in the summer was because my resume didn't have key terms that the job description or qualification was looking for. So just going through that qualification, just trying to put some of those keywords in your resume, because nowadays a lot of companies unfortunately can use AI machines, and that AI machine is scanning very specific words, specific key factors or experiences that you have on your resume, which is too usable. Lastly would be apply everywhere. So even if it seems like, oh, I can do better this position, I could do this. If your goal is to gain experience however you can. When I got my internship here, I didn't expect it to be remote. I was actually a little bit disappointed because I wanted that real internship experience. I wanted to get up. I wanted to go in the office. I wanted to see how it really works. But that doesn't mean I'm still not gaining experience because I'm still gaining a ton of experience, not only because I work with the U.S. Army War College to develop a web page for them. Not only am I getting to work with something that is a government aspect, but I'm doing what I love in the government, even though it's remote. It's still experience I can influence take me further.
And for my final question, this will be each of you. We'll start with the mayor and work our way down the road. What is the one piece of advice you would give the federal government in terms of how it can build trust with your generation?
Sure. Meet people where they are. I mean, that's the general theme of probably today's entire discussion, and the ethos of what I would tell to anyone here is, like I said, engage with folks on social media, YouTube platforms, and speak in plain language is a really big thing, specifically even within USA Jobs, is being concise and explicit for what you are looking for and what you are not looking for, most importantly, will go a long way.
Excellent. Kyle?
I'm going to call an audible here and switch questions. So my quick answer for yours is what I already said. It would be doing career fairs and meeting kids on campus with the same ferocity as the private sector is. But the thing I wanted to also say is the last question. When you do come into the federal government, whether it's as an intern or as an employee, you don't have as much freedom as you have in the private sector. You should embrace that as an opportunity, right, to figure out the second level of problem solving that you're always doing in the federal government, which is not just how do I achieve the mission of my agency, but also how do I do it within bounds that are a lot trickier to navigate than in the private sector, and treat that as an opportunity to explore some new tests and not just something that makes you back out and say this isn't for me, because it's a trick, but it's a worthwhile one.
I think I would have to say be aware of the imposter syndrome. I feel like with a lot of internships and a lot of positions when they have young people, they have more older people that are leading the younger people, but then a lot of older people within government jobs also have very strict, stern, sometimes old styles of how government should be run. And when you have someone young trying to work their way up to the position you've had for probably like many years, you want to keep in mind that you don't want to like, in a sense, try to shift or scare or overstress your intern, but also sorry, I used the wrong word. Inspire them to work to where you are. Don't add to the imposter syndrome they're probably already going through.
And I would say probably don't be negative in terms of scaring and intimidating little young young people trying to enter the workplace, and to just be patient with us. We are learning, and we definitely have a lot to learn, and we should, I think, work together and stop creating that sort of hierarchy, or stop playing into the hierarchy in terms of the superiority complex, because it does create imposter syndrome, and it does become difficult for a younger intern or professional trying to get the job. Not that you're working it, but just get a good position.
Great, thank you. Before I invite Margaret and Nadia back to the stage, I just want to thank Syracuse University, the Maxwell School, the Newhouse School for allowing us to join them today for an excellent discussion. And please join me in a round of applause for our panelists and their insightful and excellent comments.
All right. Thank you so much to our panelists. I kept jumping on my seat saying that you were saying such cool and interesting things, and I was writing it down even, maybe for our future. Oh, okay. Maybe for our future research and publications as well. So right now, I wanted to actually ask our audience some of the questions that we're asking our panelists, and just kind of have a discussion with you, both about what you potentially think and what experiences and thoughts you have around the questions that we already asked our respondents in our focus groups and in our survey. But also, you know, hoping to get some ideas from y'all going into the future, because our research on trust in government definitely does not stop here. So we'd be happy to kind of co-create and collaborate with you on our future questions. So for this piece, we are going to use a Mentimeter tool. So for those of you who are familiar, just go ahead and scan the code. It's fairly easy, even if you're not familiar with it. Here you have a QR code. Feel free to use your phones. For people online, you are more than welcome. We are hoping that you will join us as well. With the QR code, you're gonna be taken to Mentimeter, and you can just input the answers to the questions that I'm going to ask right there. And for our people online, we will see all of your answers right here. So I'm not going to be able to tell whose answers are from the audience present with us here and which ones are coming from online, but we'll just kind of all be able to look at them. And so just to get us started and get us into the right frame of mind, my first question is, have you communicated with the federal government recently? And in a few words, what did that communication look like? Just whatever associations you have. If you work for the federal government, just put on a hat of a non-federal government worker. Because for sure you have communicated with the government as a citizen. Well, you don't have to pretend. You apply for passports, you travel. Okay, we have to pivot. It's not showing up.
No, it's the answers are not loading. I think we can just ask people in the room if they'd be willing
All
to
right,
participate.
so well, great that you had a moment to think about the question. And even write it all down, so your thoughts are very well organized now. I'm going to just ask our audience, so what was, whatever was that moment of communication with the federal government, in a few words, how did that look like? If anybody from the audience, just raise your hands. If you are watching us online, feel free to post it in Zoom, and we'll have somebody read out your answer. Anybody in the audience? Recent communication with the government, any associations you have with them?
Yeah, I've tried to contact agency,
Had to go on through an online form and tried to call, and there was absolutely no option to connect with a human. It's very, very frustrating. So frustrating, and the channel of communication that you would prefer was not available. Okay, so not a very positive experience we have here. Does TSA pre-check count? Yes, that's been a miracle for me. I love it. Makes things a lot smoother. Okay, great. We have a positive experience here. Yes? Yeah.
I'm at TSA. I just had Global Entry interview, and they offered it not at the airport, so that was wonderful. It was easy to kind of set up and communicate, and that I would get my approval.
Okay, so an interview for global entry that went really well, and you basically, it's about meeting you where you are. So you were offered several options and you chose the one that was more convenient for you. Awesome. So we have a mixed bag. Oh, go ahead. Maybe just, can you wait for a second for a microphone, because we have some online people who.
I tried to use USPS to request and send in a mail-in ballot, and it's taken a month and a half, and I still don't have it. So I would say that was a frustrating experience.
So long wait in time.
So like my colleagues discussed up there, I've been subscribed to a few federal government websites, but I think the email blasts are a little too much. I receive the same emails about 20 times a week, and I think that's absurd. So.
Okay, so
It was there.
oh, I just had a glimpse of responses from our Mentimeter. Okay, it was short. Part of my daily job, urgent, rushed. Okay, yeah, so a mixed bag of experiences, but I'm really happy to hear some positive experiences. That's really good. For our federal employees, both in the audience and online, my next question is, how do the findings that we discuss differ or reinforce your experience in the federal government? So did you have anything that you thought, oh, that's really different from what I experienced being a federal employee? Or was this something that really resonated?
Hi, I'm Liz Beaumonier. I'm with the Department of Health and Human Services. There was a lot covered, so I don't know where to start.
Just the first thing that comes to mind.
I started as a presidential management fellow, and I'm actually a Maxwell alum, so that helped get me into the federal government. And honestly, I felt like if I hadn't been a PMF, I have no idea how I would have gotten in. So as a hiring official now, I do find that the USA Jobs process is onerous and it's frustrating, but I have seen some improvements in our agency over the past several years, both in trying to make getting into the federal government more accessible for folks and increasing diversity in the folks that are making the certificates. I work for an agency called HRSA, Health Resources and Service Administration, and we have several programs that are either internships or scholars fellowships for new graduates. So I do think there are concerted investments in trying to get younger folks into the federal government and try to remove some of the barriers that folks are facing with the lovely USA Jobs process. So that'll be my reaction.
Yeah, so I'm hearing that you recognize that USA Jobs experience is onerous and it could be challenging, but it would be good for young people to know that the government is making improvements and intentionally trying to put things forward that would make this process a little easier. And along the lines of what our focus group participants were surprised about, the government is hiring. So that's, if there's one thing that our young audience members take out from this whole event, that is a good message. The government is hiring. Okay, so our research found that young people feel the government does not communicate effectively. So for everybody here in the room and people online, if we have any interest in comments online, we'll read them out. What does effective communication look like to you? So effective communication from the government, any kind of examples, anything that comes to mind, what do you think it would look like? I really like the comment, something that Kyle was talking about, our member of our previous panel, when he said that forms are super important, and that's the way a lot of the public communicates with the government, and so it should be given focus and due attention. So simplified, or, like language that is not overly complicated would be something helpful. So I really like the comment, Kyle. Anything else that you all think would be helpful in terms of making government communication more effective? Yes.
Well, I also agree with the federal government being concise and getting rid of the jargon in most of their messaging. So I think it's important to, like, sometimes they like to tell us, write something that a 12-year-old would understand. And so I think for the average young person in undergraduate or grad school, give them messages that would resonate with them and that they don't have to search for different words to try to make meaning of it. And often you can even misunderstand it if the words are not oversimplified. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great point. So plain language, and yeah, making sure that you write so that anybody could understand, because government serves all people. And we don't want them spending hours trying to decipher whatever is written there. Great point. Thank you so much.
Sure, I'll just build on that and say it's an unbelievable challenge to get the government to write notices or letters in clear language, and the challenge is that it's always going through a lawyer and a general counsel who wants to add in every element of legalese possible. And so I really took to heart your research on the desire for candor, and I think that another generation into the government working its ways through these types of notices and advocating against legalese in favor of clear action-oriented direction is something that we really will benefit from.
Thank you. So clear, straightforward language, clear, straightforward messages. Anything else? Do we have any comments online? Just want to acknowledge our folks who are participating from Zoom. Okay, while we're looking for comments from Zoom, just one more question to wrap us up. Our data shows that many young adults see careers in federal agencies as an opportunity to have a positive impact, and our panelists spoke about that. We spoke about that during our first conversation. It seems like it resonates with the public here as well. And for those who have experience working in the government, how has your experience shaped your views? Excellent commentary from our panelists who also speak to our Future Leaders internship program participants, which I know the applications for our Future Leaders program are now live online on the partnership's website for summer 2025. So for those of you who are listening to us or who are here in the public and who are interested in looking at internship opportunities, please go to our website, search Future Leaders. The applications are now open, and good luck. So how has your experience working for the government as an intern or as an employee shaped your views? Yeah.
I'm the sole member of Gen Z in the NOAA Human Capital Office. I learned that recently at the Department of Commerce HR conference when we discussed generational gaps in work. And among the hundreds of attendees, I was the only member of Gen Z. So I thought it very interesting, especially working for NOAA, the agency that I work for is extremely mission focused, and seeing that as a major factor in the youth applying to federal positions that drive that really mission focused position to have an impact not only on your local community, but on the world, especially with the two major hurricanes and seeing a lot of skepticism along the National Weather Service and NOAA. I've seen a lot of troubling rhetoric regarding weather control. A lot of conspiratorial thinking has been spreading regarding the federal government, particularly the agency that I work for. So trying to bring forward that mission of environmentalism, I was heartened to see that the EPA was very positively spoken of. So hopefully NOAA can ride on those coattails a little bit. But yes, the mission focus, especially with these environmentalist and climate focused missions, are extremely important in order to reach out to the younger generation.
Thank you so much. So mission focus and having folks, your colleagues, be really curious and interested and invested in the mission. We've heard similar feedback from our future leaders, participants. So a lot of them who went on to do internships in the government are sharing that they were so inspired by the colleagues who are, really driven by the missions and are really enthusiastic about their work. So it's good to hear that is also resonating with you. Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you for this engagement session. Our apologies that this part did not go exactly as planned, but hopefully we still managed to have a great conversation. And for those who took the time to put your answers into Mentimeter online, we will read through all of your responses, and it's super helpful for us and for our future research and drafting our questions for surveys and focus groups. So thank you so much for this. And I'm going to pass it over to Margaret.
Thanks. Thanks, Nadia. And just to reiterate, we had more than 75 responses online in the comment section. So I know that the partnership folks will be able to look at all of your feedback. Okay, so I want to thank Nadia and Mark. On behalf of all of us, I want to thank the staff of the Partnership for Public Service and the IDJC staff. And on behalf of all of us, I want to thank all of you and everyone online for tuning in. Just 2 more points, and then I hope everyone will go off and have a beautiful fall afternoon. You can learn more about the partnerships work at ourpublicservice.org, and you can learn more about Syracuse and the IDJC's work at idjc.syracuse.edu. Thanks to all of you for being here today.